said in one part that I have my beliefs about what some of these things are, but I am not at the liberty to share those beliefs. Meaning, like, that's something there.
This is UFO shit, and I'm not allowed to say
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't, he would just be like, yeah, it's not UFO shit, but this is why I can't say it's UFO shit.
I can't say it because I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life.
Right.
I signed non-disclosure agreement.
What's that?
What's that? COVID cast.
COVID cast.
It's the COVID cast. If someone that has COVID and they're casting,
if someone on this cast has COVID, does it bear in the woods?
Continue with your thought, though.
No, so I think that the article was really good. It was very eye-opening. I think that the guy was speaking as honestly as he could. There was one question where he couldn't really go into detail.
Yep.
But there's still a lot more questions that I have, and that article could be like a 2 or 3 part series. I was curious. I was glad that he hinted. So I was confused whether or not the individuals he was studying all had Havana syndrome.
No, wait.
Or they were similar to it.
Okay, wait. Let's just step back a second. Let's get back to that. This is an article put out by Vice on a professor from Stanford named Gary Nolan. And he mostly is involved in like other topics. I mean, this particular one is about studying things associated with UAPs and UFOs and things like that. However, his main like expertise is in like what is it? It's like
cancer systems immunology. So like
the
body's response, right?
Right. So like, but because he developed technology that is super good at like blood analysis, from what I understood, right? I mean, this guy's done a million things. He has like hundreds of patents and all this kind of stuff, articles like that. But yet the article, as we're going to discuss right now, is him being confronted by government agents to analyze not only blood but brain spectrometry from people who have encountered UAPs. How bizarre is that?
Right. So
I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I didn't know that people who have encountered UFOs were physically affected. You know, there's some stories, you know, of like abductions and stuff, but out of all the documentaries that we've seen, not a whole lot is hinted towards people actually having physical side effects from just witnessing a UFO.
Right, and I think that this is maybe kind of the fruition of that in some ways, right? Maybe they never really thought that or something. And they started noticing things, and so said we better do a study. And this guy happened to be the guy that did these studies.
I mean, there's 2 ways you can go when you get your MD to be a doctor, an MD or DO to be a physician. You can either sway more towards practicing or more towards research. So this guy's he's a research. He has the same medical training as anybody, but he's going to be an expert like on research in the specific field. It was interesting to me when I was reading this, was thinking that like, it's almost as if they're trying to create like, you know, as kind of a simile, like, you know, like a breathalyzer for someone if they're drunk, they could create a way to be able to tell like if they had a baseline for people that encountered extraterrestrials, you know what I mean? Like if you had a experience, changed your brain, changed your you know, some sort of physiology, and then they could actually like, you know, and then the people that they'd want to interview, the people that they'd want to like, you know, study would be the ones who actually were at this baseline. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, he also has some physical pieces of evidence, supposedly, that he also studied, like metals. Some of them are metals, some of them are other things, which was super bizarre, that part. if y'all read that part is just
that part
weird.
Yeah, that part was super weird, and I don't know if you know too much about the isotopes and how different, like how that stuff works, because that was kind of confusing. But also, there's documentaries that talk about where the UFO was sighted, and they go back and they take some measurements, take some samples, but it never they don't talk a whole lot about what they found, if they found anything, and if they did find anything, they don't really go into too much about it. This is one of the first articles where the guy's gone deep into really just a couple samples, and I was more curious to kind of I didn't get a chance, but I would like to kind of look up that story from Fresno that he highlighted, like a recent father-son or father-daughter reached out to him, had an experience, and they had like sample, like how common are these samples?
Well, so what you're referencing, just to give a little context, is there seems to be some phenomena that he is indicating in which random things just drop from the sky and land in places. And these things are not biological, though there are other instances that also happens, ironically. But what he's referencing specifically is like pieces of debris, almost, like it seems. They don't really know what it is. And it's most of the things they found is metal of some extent, combinations of metals, but some of them are non-metals. And these metal fragments, how often does it happen? It just happens that what you're referencing, that those guys in Fresno, it happened to land like in their yard or something, right? Now, what the hell is this shit? And how often does it happen where nobody lives, for instance? How often does it happen in the ocean? All these things. And if you want, I can go into like the science of it and what they think it is, but it's, even if we don't, it's still bizarre that these random pieces of substances are dropping from the sky, and some of them indicate chemical properties that are not used on Earth.
Yeah, can you explain, because some of that was over my head in terms of the isotopes and how we manipulate isotopes.
Sure. So first of all, an isotope, we have to remember, at least to traditionally how it's defined to the atomic structure, is that the number of neutrons and protons are different in the atomic nucleus of the structure. However, a lot of the elements that we use on everyday life, they do exist in many naturally occurring isotopic forms, but they're very stable, right? They exist for a long time. They don't decay, right? Think about a banana peel. You throw it outside, it decays, right? Or a piece of wood, it will decay. How long, right? So some of these things that are nice and stable, we use them all the time. Things that are unstable are usually the ones we're studying in labs and linear accelerators and whatnot, trying to figure out their stable versions. However, the specific metals that this guy claimed to have investigated, some of them had very bizarre isotopic states of magnesium. Now, magnesium, though we do now know that magnesium can be, we know how to do it, at least put into different isotopic states. The magnesium element that we use in everyday life, it just doesn't exist like that. Why use all the energy to put it into this other isotopic state, right? Because to kind of alter its natural state requires a lot of energy, which requires money. And unless there's a reason to do this, why would we do it? And so these metals, not only were they not uniform in the density of the metals, they're just kind of random bullshit all over the place. Specifically, when it comes to the magnesium, why is it that a random piece of metal, and we're not talking little tiny piece. It's, decent sized piece. Like from what I understood, it was like size of a bowling ball or some shit. Where the fuck does that come from? Why does it have that chemical properties? Even if we know how to do it, why would we spend all the energy to do it if it's just going to drop out of the sky for people to discover? It's so bizarre. It's
weird. And it's not like it's coming off of planes.
Who knows where it's coming from?
Right? I can imagine it's coming off of planes, because isn't that shit reported? Like if a giant chunk of a plane comes off, isn't that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but what if, right? I don't know. I mean, I can imagine there's some way that a little shit passenger plane can drop a little piece of crap thing out the window and no one knows.
Yeah. In the smaller planes, you can actually open up the windows a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, if something fell out of the sky,
altitude
complained about it. If something fell out of the sky and you complained about it, because that's a big fucking deal, they could figure out where it came from, because it's
you can figure out what plane it came from. Yeah, everything is tracked. Yeah, but like, so I was confused. So I was kind of wondering is if it's falling from the sky, or if they see a UFO and somehow whatever energy source it uses, if it's changing material on the ground.
Well, interestingly enough, about what at least this researcher hypothesized was that if it is coming from some type of object, now, I don't know, maybe y'all know, is there a correlation between people actually observing UAPs and these things dropping out of the sky? Maybe I missed that.
I wasn't sure about that too. It seemed like two separate
like phenomena, anomalies.
Yeah. Kind of felt like it was like, this is on the table, interpret it as you will, kind of. That's where
like not every time someone sees some UFO or whatever, you find one of these or whatever. It's just some other weird shit that they had him investigating. But he did say that if he had to make a hypothesis, that this would be like a byproduct of a propulsion system which used these different isotopic states of elements to like kind of fuel its system. And then kind of like how you have exhaust for gasoline or something like that, shit has to get used. And after a while, it just dumps that shit. It just dumps like a taking a shit almost, right? Like the fuel system saying, I gotta expel the crap I use, and here's the byproduct of what happened. Which
it's interesting thought, dude, because it's also an interesting thought with like, government agency involvement, because it's like, well, how much of this are they tracking? Like, is this something where they're like, it's enough of this is happening to where they're actually getting like enough complaints about it, and they're seeing the same thing, where now they're like, all right, well, we have to figure out a way to interpret this.
It was interesting how he highlighted one of the patients or one of the patient's brain scans that he was analyzing was from Skinwalker Ranch. And I wonder
if it was the one guy.
If it was that one guy.
Yeah.
And it was interesting how, I forget what part of the brain he was analyzing, but he said like a normal brain was like I think it was the density was like 1x.
It's a density of the motor.
Yeah, let's go into the brain shit, because this shit's weirdo shit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, but so some of the density of the part of the brain that deals with like now I can't think of it.
Well, there was different parts, right? Some of them were like areas that were controlling like motor control and whatnot. And it's like, okay, if that's truly what's going on, you'd be dead. You wouldn't, your body wouldn't be able to function. But then there were other areas that were affecting like intuition. And so the way I took it was, he's like, okay, a lot of these cases, if they're UAPs and they're pilots, people that are like experts at certain things, whatever it is that you're expert at, say being a fucking pilot and flying crazy, your brain in that part is going to be more pronounced, because you're like expertise, and you got to be super split second in figuring things out, whatever that shit might be, right? Now, most people aren't like crazy super expert on one thing, right? But a pilot, you could argue, is, right?
So it's the basal ganglia. I just looked up, and it's part of like the motor control and your core brain functions, and then the people that were at that level you're speaking of right now are like 1x. of a normal person, right? Whereas what they were looking at in the studies like 5, 10, 15, and for there to be any structural damage or anything to happen to have caused these increases would have killed you.
Right. And he actually said it was as if they were standing right next to a
like a electromagnetic field or something.
Like that was at a super high level, like abnormally high level, and they were sitting right next to it.
That's what the interviewer asked, like, what would it be if you're just a random person, right? And that's his explanation.
Because you don't just go to Home Depot and pick one of those up. A transformer, you don't just pick up a transformer at Home Depot, you know?
Sleep motion.
Yeah.
But
and then at Skinwalker Ranch, like, but then again, there's been like high levels of radiation measured there.
Yeah. But then there's the group of people that did, okay, so let's say this. There are some of those people that had UAP experiences that were not pilots, okay? Yeah. Now, those people, then you say, okay, you're not the expert in that field of whatever it is. Why is it that you have like heightened anomalies in your brain associated with intuitive decision making, right? That's an interesting data point because it's not associated with like having to make those split-second decisions with like pilotry or stuff, right? And we're talking about most people don't have this amount, right? Like we're seeing. But then, as you mentioned earlier, they even brought in some of the people they thought had early Havana syndrome.
Yeah.
And so they seem to have similar brain anomalies, but yet they don't. So I don't know, man. I don't even know where to go with that.
The Havana syndrome people, those were the government contract workers in Cuba that were at the U.S. Embassy in Cuba.
It's not just Cuba, dude. It's all over the place now. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where like the name originated from, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And they were having like these weird headaches and a bunch of medical shit happened. They still can't figure out.
Shit.
Yeah.
And they speculated, they thought maybe it was like sound technology to harm the enemy, maybe from a different country. But now that we're kind of seeing it happen in various places geographically, is there an association with UFOs experiences, UAPs, whatever you want to call it? Something's going on, it seems, right? Well, it's scientific evidence.
It would be interesting if they expanded. I mean, if they had the money to expand it, anybody who was a credible eyewitness to a UFO or a UAP had a brain scan.
Yes,
just like all of the pilots that have recently come out. It'd be really, really interesting if they did a brain scan on all of them.
Did you see that this guy Gary Nolan, that one of the main reasons they approached him was because his technology in blood analysis and blood detection of different various things in the body.
Yeah.
And most of the people they brought him to do studies on, they're years on out from a quote unquote experience or something, right? But he's like, the most accurate results are going to be in a couple days of the experience, or maybe even a couple weeks at most. And so I can do the blood analysis, but I'm not really going to get anything out of it. And so in the article, he's like, hey, something happens, come out here right away, and I'll be able to tell you all kinds of shit.
But there also is a cost behind that, because he highlighted it's between $10,000 and $20,000, and that's a lot of money for. Is that coming out of pocket? Because I know
there's tax dollars.
PPO or HMO is going to cover that.
Well, you can play the game around on that one too. You can go to your doctor and say like something.
I had pub on it.
Yeah, like you have what's going on with your head, and then get an MRI right away, and then take that with you.
Well, but if it's specifically, a lot of these people are specifically government related. They work for the government, right? Is what I understood. And so if you work for the government, and now there's a new program in which when UAPs get reported and whatnot, there has to be a thorough investigation. It's a new law that's taken effect. I forgot what the law is called. I have to look it up in the different article. And so, like, let's say that happens. A pilot is out there flying in the ocean. They go, fucking shit, today I saw this crazy shit. And then they go immediately, we're flying you out. to fucking Bay Area and you're gonna go see this guy at Stanford. And then what then? You know, maybe that's a new protocol that we learn new shit.
What's
You know,
interesting-
you wonder if who's the guy, Commander Fravor, who I just wonder if all of the witnesses that day, if they've all had brain scans, if they were part of this group at all. Like, it'd be really interesting.
Maybe now, but at the time he wasn't. They were just like,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And now it's been too long. Right.
But it's interesting. You look at the parallels. It's kind of like, you know, with like the Roswell time period, you know, right, just pre-Roswell, there were all these UFO sightings. People were kind of like, they're all over the news. People like, oh yeah, this is just a thing in our life now. And then the cover-up started at Roswell. For whatever reasons, they decided they had the, you know, the, what do you call it, 12?
Majestic 12.
The Majestic 12. And then now it's all cover up. They don't exist. You're just a bunch of crazy people. And there's like almost like a parallel with now where it's like, they're like, you know, there's not a lot of like denial of it anymore. You know, you're kind of seeing in the news, it's kind of like, it's just, we're getting eased into it. Like, yeah, UFOs are real. And like articles like this Vice article aren't like being covered up by a bunch of dudes in suits showing up being like, you know, delete that article.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah, I had that exact thought. Like when I was reading the article, like, wow, things have really changed, right? Like in this day and age, we can have a scientist come out and literally say information that the government is doing shit with government studies and stuff. But there was, I think there was one question in which they asked him, like, can you give us specifically the different like areas of government they worked in or something like that? Are you allowed to say that? He goes, no, I can't say that.
No, but yeah, I was surprised that
it's a lot more reasonable than it used to be, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
totally.
And I'm surprised that the government didn't make him sign a NDA saying that he can't admit anything, right? Because
and that's how far we've gotten. I feel like that's one area we progressed in. I do feel like out of all these bullshit things that we fucked up, this is one of the things that we actually are like, I think one day it'll come out. We'll know what's up, you know.
I want to see Neil deGrasse Tyson's face when they, because that guy is like so pompous, rude about the UFO thing, and like just not won't even accept it. You know, there's something about, you know, I mean, he's clearly brilliant human being, like clearly brilliant astrophysicist, you know, but he's done a lot of good too with education, you know, for children learning, you know, astronomy, etc. But there is a thing you see sometimes with people that get this level of like pompous, you know, when they've had their egos coddled to a certain point.
I'm never wrong.
They just lose the open-mindedness, and it's actually a huge, like, it's damaging to them.
Right? Well, yeah. I think also there's like money that persuades people's opinions, because imagine if he actually came out and said, you know what, UFOs exist, I don't know what the hell's up there, something's going down, right, and just went full conspiracy theory. People from our group would be really interested, but there would also be people from the mainstream media that would be like, right, that guy's a kook, you know, he's just crazy now, he's not credible, right?
Do you get that vibe? I don't get that vibe from him. I get that vibe he likes to be right, and he's very argumentative.
Yeah, I get the vibe that he likes to be right, but also I get the vibe that he's in a position where it would be dangerous for him to, you know, veer off the beaten path.
Or maybe he's just gone down that. I mean, when you say UFOs don't exist, I mean, you can't really say that anymore. It's a fact.
When the government has a department that investigates UFOs.
Yeah, and I think maybe his thing is 0% of all of these things are any kind of thing from a different planet or solar system or whatever the fuck you want to say. And I don't know, is when you reference like, you know, ancient people, maybe they evolved already. Maybe that's what, you know, sometimes that's a possibility as well, right? I don't know what his views are on that, but for sure on the alien stuff, it's like, no. You know, it's a hard no.
When he argues it, it's like he does the same shit. I don't think he's involved in a conspiracy cover-up, although you never know. But I don't think so.
No.
But he speaks in a manner that sounds like he is. It sounds like the swamp gas thing. He'll be like, as soon as it, because, in the Joe Rogan podcast, he brought up Fravor, because I mean, that's just one of the ones where it's like, hey, this guy is an intelligent, level-headed individual. He's like, yeah, I saw this shit. It's not like there's no, there are a lot of level-headed people at like Bob Lazar and stuff like that. Just, you listen to him, you believe him. But this guy's like kind of the extreme, and like you definitely believe Fravor. Like, there's no reason not to, right? And he just immediately been like, oh, it's like, people have hallucinations all the time. There's damage in radar and all this sort of stuff. And this is like, like he's just basically he's overly he's not like taking a middle stance and like considering both sides. He's just so far on the side that you're full of shit that he's gonna like, now he's actually reaching more with his argument than being logical, I think.
What's interesting, because that's kind of an example of, it happens, it's it's kind of isolated, but it happens to a lot of different disciplines, not just like physics or something, right? You go archaeology
100%.
or whatever, and there'd be some brilliant ass people that you show them some evidence or something that kind of counters their established way of thinking, and they're like, nah, it's bullshit or whatever, right? But sadly, that's the opposite of doing the work of science, right? Is figuring out the truth of things and figuring out how things work. Another example is like all this billions and trillions of evidence, in my opinion, on like ancient technology that we can't explain. And what do the mainstream archaeologists say about a lot of these things? Yeah, they just pull them up with ropes and shit like that,
I mentioned multiple times about that whole anthropological study with introducing like tribes that had not modernized as the rest of the world, and then they actually had suicides involved in it because they could not handle their whole world being torn apart. But, the easiest, most cliche example of this is like, like the world being flat one day, the world being the center of the universe one day, right? These things that like now are like, we our kids will laugh at them, right? Our grandkids.
The world's not flat,
right? And and like, but when those people figured that those brilliant individuals thought outside the box, figured out these things that were well against the established norm, they were ostracized for it first. They're tortured for it, and that's an exact example. A lot of people, and I guarantee you, a lot of the people that were opposing what we now know to be true, but opposing these points of view, were probably brilliant individuals. They weren't all a bunch of dummies, They were people that were really smart, been studying astronomy and geography and all this for years and years and years and years, and probably even smarter than us on some levels, absolutely. And they were unable to wrap their head around this new thought, which ended up being true. And like that's a clear example like that. And no matter what it is, once you figure out, something, I mean, dude, the ability to fly, a plane, there was like a joke before, and every technological advance. You imagine telling your great grandparents that someday like there'd be computers at all, and let alone that you'd be able to store as much as you can on our telephones,
Yeah.
insane.
But you know what? That is such a thing. It's such a prevalent thing in our lives, in which people have belief systems. I'd say the vast majority of human beings on planet Earth have such a founded belief system, in which if we try to argue or debate or figure out this or that, and it counters your belief system, it is detrimental to your like existence on planet Earth, right? Your reality, your consciousness. And I'm just like, I'm the total opposite. I don't have a belief system, really. I just anything that makes sense and scientifically valid, or even in the phenomenal spiritual realm or whatever. We don't know. We cannot to claim I know this or know that, and that's the way it is. It's just that's the problem with our whole planet right now, man.
There's extremes on both sides, right? You got
it's everywhere.
most fundamentalist on any discipline, the most fundamentalist person that no matter what evidence you show them, they will not believe anything. And on the other hand, you got the people that went down to South America and drank Kool-Aid at the Jim Jones camp, right? So like, it's like the way far ends as far as I can get on the screen with my hands. But
yeah, but the more information that's released and the more doctors like this come forward and the more information that they give to the public, and eventually once the government eventually decides to kind of let things loose.
Yeah, but this guy, I don't think that he would do this if he didn't have some kind of like guarantee or something that he's going to be fucked, right? Like he's worked his whole life to become a prominent researcher in a totally different field. And we failed to mention that the funniest, the whole thing, the way this happened is he did the study on that little like alien looking like child creature, right? Remember that? And it looks, if you ever seen this image, geez, what the fuck is it called, dude?
He said it was human.
Yeah, it totally is human, but it looks like, if you saw it, it looks like a little baby alien or something.
And you could see that image used in UFO documentaries as like,
there it is.
Yeah,
I forgot. I can barely see it. But there's a name for it though. It's from like South America, I believe.
Look at my screen.
Yeah, you can see it. Yeah, but it's like a whole wide range of, you see people born now or wherever throughout history that have horrible genetic disorders,
right.
And that was just an example of he proved it through the science and the blood analysis and DNA, not blood analysis probably, but like DNA analysis. And he said, even in the article, UFO people are not going to be happy that I said that.
And they were pissed.
Like,
they weren't.
And so even you have to go on that realm, right? If you're a person that believes UFOs are real or they're from aliens or something, don't get mad when science proves you wrong. I want to know what shit is. Now that's a weird thing. It looks like a quote unquote alien.
Alien baby.
And the thing is, like, he didn't come out. He didn't come out and say UFOs don't exist. He said this thing right here. This
one
is
thing.
One thing.
If you believe in the UFOs, you should kind of be happy. Be like, great, we're narrowing the scope of where we need to look and figure shit out.
Even he said in one part that I have my beliefs about what some of these things are,
right,
but I am not at the liberty to share those beliefs.
Meaning
like that's something there.
This is UFO shit, and I'm not allowed to say because if it wasn't, he would just be like, "Yeah, it's not UFO shit." But this is why I can't say it's UFO. Shit.
I can't say it because I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life.
Right. I signed non-disclosure agreement. I mean, like what I really like about this article too, and really just I dug about it was that like this is an individual that they show, this Dr. Nolan. He's highly educated. He's a leader in his field. He's highly educated in this one small niche of medicine that is totally pertinent to the specific subject. So now you have that established, and then now he's going to, you're looking at comparison, understanding his brain changes and this and that and this and that from him, and then you go with where you you want with it. But I like that a lot better than then it's like there was a couple articles we were talking about tonight where I was looking at it. It's like Billy Bob's Trailer Park, and he's like, I seen it. It came right down my yard right here. I seen it, and it flew off, and there were butterflies, and it was crazy.
But think about it. I found that article like a week ago or so. I sent to y'all, and y'all probably barely read it or didn't read it at all. And then, today kind of came to more fruition. But like, how many people even read that all the way through or whatever? Probably not many people, right? And then you go to someone, you talk about this, and it's like, they're probably going to put the COVID vaccine in you, and you have robots inside you. That's the same people,
I'm wondering if
read this article when you lose your freedom.
If Vice has thought about doing, or somebody has thought about doing like a little 10-minute, 15-minute documentary on this guy, and actually seeing if they could go down to the lab and actually seeing some of these samples and getting kind of more.
Sounds like a on-site investigation for Mr.
I'm
Yeah,
down.
very
I'm
local.
down.
A very local.
I'm down. Yeah, we're in the area. I'm, you know,
Dude,
just
he's just a doctor who works somewhere, dude.
I got a cousin that works
Don't
there
wear
as
your
a
mask.
nurse.
dude. I have a neighbor that's a nurse at Stanford. It's fine.
Yeah, we all,
You
most
know,
people around here know someone works there.
Just go in there and steal that little baby.
Find me the key.
See you running away with the security chasing you, and you got that
little baby alien.
Oh, dude,
I'll be live streaming it.
Dude, you go to jail
Got
for a
it.
little bit, but when you got out, dude, UFO Daily News would be at 10,000 subscribers, dude, just from that publicity. That's totally worth it. Just take it and like dance it in front of the camera a little bit.
Just get
It's a small sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Hey, but if that doctor wants to invite me, I'll come down.